Welcome to A Lawyer's Guide to the Galaxy, a podcast about geek culture by lawyers, with your hosts, Ben Siders and Kirk Damon.
This episode is brought to you by the Pelgrim Visitors Bureau and Historical Preservation Society, preserving the future by preserving history.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Star Wars Episode 8 prediction episode, which is Episode 12 of A Lawyer's Guide to the Galaxy. I am your host, Ben Siders, and with me is your other host, Kirk Damon.
That's Kirk, isn't the captain of the Enterprise. I can't make a Star Wars reference, unfortunately, to that name.
Yeah, although I could go with a Ben joke with Ben Kenobi and Ben Solo, I suppose. So when you listen to this, Star Wars Episode 8 will be debuting later this week. There have been a lot of speculation about plot points swirling around the internet. We asked you all to send in your Star Wars Episode 8 predictions. We have compiled them. And we are now going to go through them and say whether we thumbs up or thumbs down. Do we agree or disagree that this prediction will come true or not? And then after we've seen it 800 times over the holidays, we will come back probably sometime in January and score and see whether a Kirk or I or you guys, how accurate we all were.
And a couple things about this, definitely for those of you who are regular listeners and have listened to the show repeatedly, this is going to be a law light episode. A lot of it's because we're obviously sort of, in holidays. We figured, the listeners would prefer something that's not necessarily, heavy technical. If nothing else, you're probably on winter break. And so therefore we figured we'd just sort of do a little more science fiction. We also get commented a lot of times in conjunction with the show, why do we do so much Star Wars?
It's going on.
Yeah, and I think we wanted to kind of address that question. This is a good place to do it. Which is, there's a lot of Star Wars going on right now. There's obviously Star Trek, and we've been sort of paying attention to the Star Trek, the new Trek. I know.
And the Infinity War trailer. We watched that the other day.
Yeah, we both watched the Infinity War trailer, and now I'm dying to see it, even though I'm not that big into superhero movies.
No, it looks terrific. Well, one legal thing we did talk about on the way over here, we wanted to do some sort of Star Wars musical theme besides besides Lorem Ipsum and the Scriveners, which is our Cantina band. We wanted to do some sort of, I told Kirk I wanted to play like the starting tones of the Star Wars theme song.
Just the initial chord.
Just the initial chord or something, but we weren't actually sure if that would get us into trouble or not. Just to show you how dicey these issues are, that's almost certainly a fair use, I would think, but, why invite the difficulty?
Yeah, I mean, there's the issue of, 3 seconds, multiple chords. It would just be one chord, presumably. At the same time, it's a chord everybody knows. I always talk about one of my favorite...
It's the most recognizable chord.
One of my favorite Star Wars moments is actually, and admittedly, not necessarily the greatest movie, but Episode 1, Episode 1 opening night in Boston. And when I saw it, I still remember because we came in and, I went with a bunch of people from MIT who had seen it already. A number of them were on their 3rd or 4th showing. But we went in, and they start up the thing, and they pop up the screen. It does, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And when that screen comes up, all of a sudden the whole crowd just went silent. Like there'd been, lightsaber battles running around, all sorts of stuff happening. As soon as that starts, the whole crowd just goes completely silent. You could hear a pin drop. And as soon as that chord hit, there's this just roar cheer coming from the crowd.
Too.
And it was just so awesome because it was like hey, we know exactly what this is and what we're in for.
Have there been long lines for these? Like, remember when Episode 1 came out, people were literally camped out for weeks.
Yeah. Well, I have to admit, so I have tickets to my Episode 8 tickets, and I'm kind of annoyed because I don't have them opening night because the vast majority of the local movie theaters went through Fandango, who decided that apparently my IP address being older is somewhere in Japan.
Yeah, I remember that.
And wouldn't let me buy them because of that. So I'm actually the next evening over, but I'm at my favorite theater. So
I avoid opening night on purpose. I don't know. I love the Star Wars films. They're fun, but I'm going to be taking all my kids with. I just don't want to deal with the hassle of fighting the opening night crowds and all the fanboys and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, see, we don't take the kids when we do them, partially because of the fact that my daughter's still a little scared of lightsaber battles. She's not too fond of
your kids are a little younger than mine.
Yeah, they're a little younger than yours and stuff like that. But the big thing I remember with opening night is and the thing I always thought was great about opening night was not so much seeing the movie opening night, it's the fans you see it with. And that's what's really fun. You get guys in costume. I don't dress up, when I do it that much, but it's, I have like a Star Wars t-shirt I'll wear and stuff like that. But, Episode 3 when we did it going in, and that was right when the Regal Theater had just opened here in St. Louis. And when they did that, they basically were just adding screens for people who wanted to come in. And we were one of the big screens, early people. And it was great because you were standing out in line just having a great time. And that was also the one where the theater got really smart and basically let everybody into the theater and then sent somebody around with all the concessions. So you didn't even have to stand up to buy concessions. It was fantastic. Everybody was filling their popcorn. We were all getting completely sugar buzzed, eating too much of the candy that they were passing around.
I remember for Episode 1, so I did not wait in line as much of a Star Wars fanboy as I was was at the time. I was living in Iowa City back then, and I was walking by one of the little art house theaters that was showing that and nothing other than episode 1.
Nice.
And somebody I knew from this ISP I worked at happened to be like third in line and had been there for literally weeks. And the person he was with had gotten sick and couldn't go. And he saw me and just said, "Hey, Ben, do you want this ticket?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah." So I got to go to episode 1 on opening night on the first showing, and I waited a total of 4 minutes in line for it. It was awesome.
Nice. Yeah, we did episode 1. Like I said, I went with a bunch of people from MIT. Unfortunately, there was a group of us. I went into one theater. So a bunch of friends of mine got into the second theater. Pretty much MIT, the group that I went with, had bought out over an entire theater's worth of tickets. And unfortunately, the other group that went in at one of the pivotal lightsaber battles near the end of episode 1, the film actually broke. And it burned. So they could actually not put it back on. She ended up
Did the projectionist survive the riot?
The projectionist did survive, partially because the manager came out and gave them like 5 of the you can come see any movie you ever want at the theater, including coming back and seeing Star Wars for free.
Wow.
And so they came back the next day, and it was, it wasn't that big of a deal, but they only missed probably the last, 20 minutes. But at the same time, missing the last 20 minutes of episode 1 is pretty much
the only part of the show that we're seeing.
Part of episode 1.
That's so true. Let's get into our predictions here. We've got, I think, 25 or so. I cut some of them out. We had some that were duplicative of things other people had suggested, and some that I sort of revised and edited to be a little more interesting. So we're going to go through these and keep score. And you don't need to have any deep knowledge of Star Trek or Star Wars. If you've seen, you definitely don't need any knowledge of Star Trek. If you've seen Episode 7. This should be relatively straightforward.
If you haven't seen episode 7, why are you listening to this podcast?
We'll explain, the joke behind some of these as we go. So the first one is one that I wrote. A character will say the line, "I've got a bad feeling about this." True or false?
It's got to be true.
Yeah,
Somebody's going to say it. Though I have a further prediction. My statement is, I think it will be said by a character who does not speak English and will have to be translated.
Yeah, see, I've got Poe as saying this, and let's go into why we have this. I think all of the other movies have had this line. So who says it in 4? Han Solo does, I think, right? And then 5 is Leia when they're inside the asteroid monster. Yep. Who says it in Jedi, though?
No, it's
C-3PO.
C-3PO,
yeah. And I haven't watched the prequels enough for obvious reasons to remember, but I know it's in there.
Anakin says it in the first one, if I remember correctly. In episode 1, I can't remember who says it in episode 2 or 3.
I don't either.
3 might be C-3PO again, but
could be. But someone's going to say it. That one's an easy one. I've got Poe. Kirk has some character who does not speak English, and it's going to be subtitled.
My assertion is, and who I think it's going to be, is either Chewbacca or Chewbacca's new sort of companion in the Millennium Falcon will say something, and it will be translated as, "I've got a bad feeling about this too."
They've never subtitled Chewbacca's lines, though. I think if they did that, they'd have to have him do the Wookiee sounds, and someone goes, "Yeah, I've got a bad feeling about this too."
Exactly that is. It's going to be, he's going to make the sound, and somebody's going to say, "I've got a bad feeling about this too." And I think they're going to do it as the joke of having a character. And that could also be R2-D2.
Yeah, I was going to say it could be a droid. All right, our next one, Princess Leia dies.
Yeah, I got to go with, that's going to be true.
I've actually got false on this one. I don't think they're going to kill off the character. But we're going to get to another prediction later. Yep. I do think she's going to, for obvious reasons, exit the narrative. Yep. But I don't think they're going to kill her.
I think they're actually going to kill her, and the reason I think they're actually going to kill Princess Leia, I have the feeling it's going to be, and this is sort of my take, my take would be they probably rewrote the script to allow it to happen. There was probably something where she was going to exit.
Because all the primary filming was done when Carrie Fisher died, I think.
But I think they may very well have her die in conjunction with it, partially because of the fact that I think they can make it a very moving moment in conjunction with the movie, particularly given the circumstances of Carrie Fisher. And I think, quite frankly, to me, it's almost a fan service moment.
Yeah.
But it's a fan service moment that would be, I think, incredibly poignant for what it's trying to say, particularly with Kylo Ren having killed, Han Solo.
Yeah, one thing that kind of makes sense with that theory is this is, obviously, we have a new trilogy, 7, 8, and 9, and in the traditional 3-act structure, Act 2 is your darkest, lowest point. It was that way with Empire. It really wasn't that way, I guess, with the original, with the prequels.
It kind of is. I mean,
the prequels had no real narrative structure anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the darkest point in many respects is the early components of 3.
Yeah.
I think of that. But there is kind of some dark moments, and there's a lot of, I think, also with 2 in the thing, is it's the setup, dark setup of what's happening, that he's now down the wrong path. I mean, you have the dark moment, you have the attack on the Tusken Raiders, which arguably was pretty dark moment.
Well, and then the middle movies have all had that scene at the end. So Empire has the scene where you've got Luke, Leia, 3PO, and R2 standing in the at the window watching the Millennium Falcon take off, and then the same basic scene is mirrored at the end of episode 2. I'm expecting that same scene to be the end of episode 8. It's just a matter of what's the configuration of people that are there.
Yeah. And I think that's potentially going to go off and searching and stuff like that. And again, I think it's partially going to be because I think Leia is also sort of the primary leader of the Resistance, so to speak. And we've seen Mon Mothma, obviously, but I think Princess Leia being the primary feeling of the Resistance, I think that does give it that darkness. And again, I can see it being something where they do it. In some sense, they do kill her character off in some sense as a tribute to Carrie Fisher. I mean, as strange as that sounds, I could definitely see that. And part of it's based upon like the idea of the way they used Tarkin in Rogue One. Which was a very sort of honorable, presentation of him, and I think a very Cushing, nice, very nice presentation of the actor himself. So
I actually think the reason I think they won't kill her character is because Carrie Fisher passed away. I think that may just hit people a little too hard in the feels. And I got a prediction later on about how they are going to honor her, but. So we have our first disagreement on point to whether Princess Leia dies. Prediction 3 is Chewbacca dies.
I'm going to say false on that.
See, I've actually got true. His character kind of doesn't have a purpose anymore other than to fly the Millennium Falcon around.
He doesn't, but at the same time, Chewbacca is essentially a versatile actor. Any actor can arguably play Chewbacca.
That's true.
And so
Peter
my argument
can
is,
barely walk anymore.
Yeah, he's the easy one to keep in as a sort of continuing process for a while because there's no requirement of any one actor. And I think that's the reason I have him is I think he will be the last one of the original trilogy to go. I think they've got to sort of work their way through everybody else first just because he's such an easy character for anybody to play.
See, I originally had thought they were going to gradually kill off all of the original cast because, one, these actors are getting older and they're going to start to become unavailable, whether for health reasons or for general, I don't want to do this anymore reasons. And I also thought they just wanted to clear that sort of narrative space to make room for new stories. But I also read the other day that they're really not going to continue with these characters after this trilogy. They got Rian Johnson's doing a new separate trilogy, but according to Daisy Ridley, like this is it. Rey's in this trilogy and then she's gone. So maybe they're going to avoid that problem. There's no need to kill everybody off because they're just going to drop this storyline.
They will move far enough in the future because obviously they're going to be a continuing storyline. They'll move too far in the future that they're all gone anyway.
So we have two disagreements now. Okay, prediction 4. Hayden Christensen or Ewan McGregor have cameos as the ghosts of Anakin or Ben Kenobi. For those of you who don't remember, Hayden Christensen played young Anakin Skywalker in the prequels, and Ewan McGregor played the young Ben Kenobi. What do you think, Kirk?
I got to go with false, just because I really hope that's true. Mostly I'm saying false because I really don't want them to have cameos in the movie.
Perversely, I think I'd rather see Hayden Christensen get a little redemption. He's not a bad actor. He just had a horrible director for those prequels. I'd like to see him get a little acting redemption by coming back and having 4 seconds. I don't know if he says anything or not. Just like as Anakin's Force Ghost. I mean, he's 10 years older now. When did those come out? Those are a long time ago. Almost 15 years older now. I'd like to see him just for a second. But I kind of think, I put true on this more optimistically than anything. I sort of think they're avoiding a whole lot of references to the prequels because there's so much fan ire around those movies.
I put false on it again, partially because I just don't really want to see them come back. And particularly my thing with Hayden Christensen is I think the presentation of what Kylo Ren is, Kylo Ren's sort of veneration of Darth Vader, it needs to be Darth Vader. It needs to not be
and that's
Anakin
what I'm thinking is they'll have
stage.
Hayden Christensen show up to humanize Vader a little bit and show Kylo Ren, I ended up being redeemed. I was a good guy. My son saved me. You're heading down the wrong path, which would add to the conflict of the Kylo Ren character. But
I can see
I guess
that.
you don't need Hayden Christensen specifically to do that. But anyway, okay. Number 5, Kylo Ren executes a high-ranking officer as punishment for failure, like Admiral Ozzel and Captain Nita in Empire Strikes Back.
Captain Nita. I have to admit, those are actually some of my favorite scenes in Empire Strikes Back.
It's good character building scenes for Vader.
Yeah, they're so good. I actually put true down for this.
So did I.
Though I'm not sure it's necessarily going to be an officer. Quite frankly, I can actually see this being a droid as well.
Oh, yeah,
was one thought I had because he does.
He likes to smash equipment.
He likes to smash equipment, and that's where I was wondering if he might actually try to go after a droid or something like that. Though at the same time, I think an officer does make him a little bit more evil. My take of where it would potentially come from is it's him trying to be like Vader.
Yeah,
pushing the character towards, hey, he is getting this, sort of jackbooted thug.
Don't seem to get along, and he came close to killing Hux in Episode 7 a couple times. And Hux is kind of crazy and unlikable anyway. Yeah, that might be a scene that the fans are like, okay, I don't like Kylo Ren, but I really don't like Hux, and so if Kylo Ren kills Hux, that's fine. So yeah, I've got true on that one too. I don't know who it will be, but I've got true. Number 6. There is a reference to something from the Timothy Zahn novels. I think we have to explain this one a little bit.
Yeah, so, I mean, for those who don't know, the Timothy Zahn novels, the 3 novels that were written sort of as the sequel to Return of the Jedi.
And they were written before the prequels. They came out in the early 90s, I think?
Early 90s.
I remember somebody reading them in high school.
Yeah, they were written to be the sort of, follow on the next trilogy after Return of the Jedi.
But they took place right on the heels of it, like a year or two after Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, well, a lot of it was the idea of the Empire reeling and sort of, coming back and...
The mopping up action.
The mopping up actions of the rebellion and sort of trying to capture the Empire, but at the same time, the Empire becoming a force again. The things I have with the Timothy Zahn novels, one, I actually think they're extremely good stories, and I think they're very interesting in the way they work.
If you were to translate sort of the feel and theme of Star Wars into a book, he did a really nice job of that. They're even structured. They all open with a space scene, the narrative structure, all is very, very Star Wars.
They also use a lot of neat things of explaining sort of things that I don't think had intended long-term meaning in a lot of the movies, but going forward, I mean, the cave being the major one that sort of appears in
explains some stuff that just
movies.
logically made no sense, especially in Return of the Jedi. The Empire has 20,000 Star Destroyers, and the Rebellion has a tiny handful of ships, which were mostly destroyed. Once the Death Star gets blown up, why didn't the rest of the Imperial fleet just annihilate the rest of the rebels? They just vanished.
The big thing I think they had with it is the idea that effectively the Emperor was required for coordination. He was essentially a beacon that was necessary to coordinate the Imperium.
And he was so deeply entrenched
big
in his army that once he was gone, they were kind of listless and leaderless and didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So, the reason I think... So what do you think, Kirk? True or false?
I put false on it, and the reason I put false on it is... While I can see it happening because of the references that occurred in Rogue One, and them obviously doing it, and it's been stated that they will not overturn the Timothy Zahn trilogy.
Well, and the Rebels cartoons, too, have Thrawn. Grand Admiral Thrawn is the main character, the main antagonist in the Zahn novels, and he actually appears in the Rebels cartoons.
Yep, he's going to appear in it, and it's a big deal. The reason I don't think there's going to be a reference into it is because I think they're trying to, while they don't want to overturn it, I don't think they want to specifically endorse it either. I think they're leaving that to Rebels and to the animated series to sort of further that part of the explanation.
So I put true on this one, and you'll find out why, I think, if I mark these consistently. I may have hedged my bets, but so I'm going to say true, and I'll go one further. I think we're going to find out that Luke had a wife, and it was Mara Jade. In the Zahn novels. Now, they may not say Mara Jade by name, but I'm expecting another flashback type scene like we had when Rey touched Luke's lightsaber, where she sees Luke with his wife, and it's a red-haired woman, which is clearly a reference to Mara Jade.
Yeah.
So that's my thoughts on that. Okay, number 7, Vader's castle from Rogue One will be in the movie somehow.
I like this as a prediction, quite frankly.
I do too. I hadn't thought about it.
And I came back with this, and I actually said true.
I said false, but we don't agree on anything.
Yeah, we're not agreeing on anything. The reason I actually said true in this is because, one, I think the Vader's Castle was an extremely popular thing.
It was supposed to be an Empire Strikes Back, and I got cut in editing.
And it's something where I could see it being something for Kylo Ren, whether done as a flashback or for Rey.
It would make sense that he'd go there. Like if he's seeking Vader's guidance or whatnot, that he'd go there. And
that's my immediate take, is either Kylo Ren goes there to seek guidance, or Rey has a flashback associated with the castle, somehow associated with Vader. I could also see that as well, because remember, it's not actually Luke's lightsaber she has, it's Anakin's.
That's true. Because Luke's the green one's presumably gone.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to it? He throws it at the end of Jedi.
He throws it at the end of Jedi, and the assumption is it falls down the shaft.
Or gets blown up with the, okay. All right, number 8. 8. Luke had a wife and Ren killed her. I got true for this one.
I know you got true for this one. This is the one thing that we've had a lot of fun with, and you'll hear some of my predictions later. I say false, and this ties into
I'm
another
putting all my
later.
eggs in this Luke's wife basket.
You're going to Luke's wife basket, but you also play off of why Luke has to have a wife, which I don't think he needs.
Yeah, I know.
And that's part of this as well. We can get into that one later, I think, as to what it is, and just sort of move from that. But we definitely got you have to, and Ren killed her. If he has one, probably.
Yep.
But I think we've got, where we're going from there. So
this next one I love. I hadn't even considered this. Lando Calrissian will either make an appearance or be referenced by name. I put false, but I'm reverse jinxing. I so badly want to see Billy D. Williams as Lando Calrissian.
I say a true in this one. The reason I put a true in it is because of the fact that I'm pretty sure he's going to appear in the Han movie.
Oh, you're right.
And so I can very well see them referencing him as a setup
up
for that, as to who he is, in case you haven't seen episode 7. Episode 5 or 6. So that's
this would be the point in the structure where he shows back, and they haven't really talked about what happened to him. He just disappears. He was such a key part of. He blew up the Death Star. He won the space battle.
Yeah, I think it'll be a minor reference, but I do think it'll potentially happen. So
all right, number 10, Poe and Finn will have their own separate buddy adventure while Rey trains with Luke. True.
Well, I
To me, that seems so-
I put this as false because I don't think it'll be a buddy adventure. That was my sort of argument with it.
As buddies.
I think they're going to do something. Yes, there's going to be something that they go off and do, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be a buddy adventure. I can very well believe that they actually go off in different directions, but they're obviously going to be involved with each other. I think it's just, what do you consider a buddy adventure?
Yeah, I guess I didn't think
else?
about that part. I just kind of thought if they're together, it's going to be a buddy adventure, but I guess it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
All right, 11. This is my absolute favorite of all the ones we got because this is insanity. It's so crazy it could be true. Snoke is actually Boba Fett, who escaped the Sarlacc pit and looks all messed up because he was partially digested.
You gotta love it. It is 10,000 years. I mean, so, presumably Boba Fett would stay alive for the entire digestion period.
Put false.
I put false, yeah.
It's so ridiculous. But
now, you know the reason I put false, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to say this as to who Snoke is. Mm-hmm. I said this after the end of episode 7. I'm no longer convinced this is true, but I think Snoke is actually Luke Skywalker in disguise. He actually appears that way because it is a disguise in order to conceal who he is, because he is training both sides.
Yeah, that could very well turn out to be the case, especially with the gray Jedi references they got.
And that's the thing I've had with it is I think Luke said the argument I had at the end of episode 7, again, seeing the previews for episode 8 sort of tends to be a different direction, but you never know what a preview is going to do, was the idea that effectively Snoke and Luke were both the same side. He has realized the fact that the Force requires balance, which means it needs dark and light, and he is the only remaining Jedi, so he is training both sides.
The next one I put false on, and I'm not going to change my bet. We're following dude rules, so you can't change things. But number 12, Captain Phasma takes off her helmet. I put false, but the more I think about this, when you've got Gwendolyn Christie in your cast, if I'm her and I want to feature this character more, I think I insist upon having a chance to take the helmet off.
Yeah, I put true, and the reason I put true for Captain Phasma takes off her helmet is because I think most of the fans were actually very annoyed with Captain Phasma not being as cool as she should be.
And really having no role other than
basically
being a trash chute.
Yeah, being thrown in a trash chute and being sort of a kicking bag for when they're trying to get off the Death Stars. And so I think I see Captain Phasma taking a much more major role. I can very well see her taking off her helmet just because of the idea of presenting the fact that she is a sort of sergeant, in this. I think that she presented as effectively a sergeant or something along those lines, but definitely an officer of the stormtroopers. And I think her taking off her helmet will make her much more of a character akin to the fact that the stormtroopers are no longer faceless thugs, so to speak. I mean, we've already had it happen in conjunction with Finn. I can very well see him happening with Captain Phasma. And again, partially because I do think they want to introduce the fact that the actress is the Captain Phasma character.
All right, number 13. Somebody will say a line like, "No, I am your father," to Rey. I put this down as false. Somebody's going to say that line to Kylo Ren.
I can believe that. I put that down as false as well. The reason I put it down is because I don't think Rey's going to find out who her parents are in this movie.
That's a separate one we've got coming up.
So,
okay, number 4. Rey is a Skywalker. Note that I said a Skywalker, not necessarily Luke's daughter. You
already know what my answer to this one is.
I've got true.
I've got true on this one, and mine is the key to this there is not necessarily Luke's daughter. I believe that Rey is Leia's daughter. I believe that, and Ben and I've had this discussion. So here's my prediction in conjunction with it. Rey is Leia's daughter. She is from so lack of a better term, fling that Leia had, or that Leia had after Han left. Mm-hmm. And my prediction is with Poe.
You've been on this.
I've been on this for
after
a while.
We first saw episode 7.
Just with the idea that Poe is a roguish character. She fits with Leia's personality as to what Leia likes.
Well, that's a good point, though.
And the idea I had with it is that effectively Leia is pregnant with Rey when Kylo turns. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason why Rey is hidden, is because she basically had not informed anybody about this. That's the sort of poignant scene we see in the flashback, is them basically hiding Rey because of Kylo's action. Actually, it's based on my timing in there, because obviously that she couldn't be pregnant for the timing.
That's the thing. That's the one problem with that, is the timing's not quite right, because Kylo Ren and Rey are I think we're meant to think they're around the same age. He seems a little older than her, maybe. I think
she is. I think he is a little older, because again, I think it's Kylo Ren, and you have the issue with Han. Rey is born. I think Leia is.
But he could be off in isolation with Luke and not realize that he's got a sister. It's certainly possible.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a way to make it work.
Yeah, there's always the possibility they're twins, but I think they're going to move away from the twin and basically just say they are brother sister, but they're not necessarily twins. And I can very well see them having different fathers.
So I've got Rey being the daughter of Luke and Mara Jade, and it's not a terribly creative or imaginative plot line, but this is Disney. I expect them to play it a little safe here. I'll be very disappointed if I'm right and it's that boring. But there's that one line in 7 where Maz Kanata says that was Anakin's lightsaber, and then it was Luke's lightsaber, now it calls to you. I'm like, all right. I thought where she was going was, oh, and by the way, you're Luke's daughter too.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's just my hunch based on because movies and nothing else. Okay, number 15. There will be some reference to something Han did in the past that winds up being the plot of the Han Solo standalone movie next year.
I can give it a somewhat true statement.
I'm saying true, yeah. I think we're not going to know about. We're not going to be able to decide this one until that movie comes out, really.
Seriously.
So, but yeah, I think they'll do that.
Yep.
All right, I love this one too. Number 16, Jar Jar Binks was actually a Sith Lord manipulating everybody all this time, and Snoke is his disciple.
I love the drunken master concept. The idea that Jar Jar Binks actually was essentially a Jedi master, Sith Lord, something along those lines, and just didn't realize it or was concealing it. I think that's a sort of fun theory, but quite frankly, I think it's false.
I think it's ridiculous.
I think I don't think Disney wants anything to do with Jar Jar Binks.
Oh, so I looked this up to see if this was had any traction or somebody's just messing with us. And there was an interview with George Lucas, I guess earlier this year, where somebody actually raised this fan theory with him, and he did not outright dismiss it. And George Lucas being who he is, I can very well see him either being like, you know what, that's crazy, I'm going to go with it because it makes Jar Jar Binks seem less like a miscalculation.
Yeah. Well, I've seen the argument with Jar Jar Binks being a drunken master, the idea of following the particular, tenets of martial arts where basically you pretend to be incompetent, but you're not. And the idea of when he's attacking the droids, the fact that every time he kicks his foot, the blaster hits a droid.
Yeah.
Those types of concepts being with it. I think that's a cool theory, but I don't think it was intended.
Apart when you look at the structure of those movies.
Yeah, I just don't think it was intended.
I don't know. Looking back at the first one, it's hard to impose any narrative structure on the first film. I'm still not sure what Palpatine's ultimate goal was or why the things he did got closer to that goal. Yeah. But it didn't seem to me like his goal was for Naboo to be liberated.
No, I always took that the idea of what he was trying to do was simply lead to conflict. He was trying to create the conflict, which get
basically
him
the plot
Anakin,
of all 3 prequels. Okay, number 17. There will be an important post-credits scene. I put this down as false because they've never done post-credit scenes, but I do think they will do something post-credits for Carrie Fisher, or maybe pre-credits.
I think there will probably be some very nice, again, sort of an honorarium type of thing at the end of the credits. Knowing Star Wars fans, I think the average Star Wars fan will hang out through the credits regardless, even if there isn't anything at the end. Again, they usually don't put scenes at the end of Star Wars, and the reason I don't think they'll start now is because while that is a common thing, it's known for certain movie franchises.
Like the Marvel
it's known for the Marvel films and stuff like that. And again, I just don't see them going down that route. I don't think they want to start that, partially because if you even think about it, one of the keys from the original Star Wars was George Lucas changing the credits. Originally, you remember you had the lead actors were in the credits at the start, and he didn't want to do that because of the
for a while, the Screen Actors Guild required certain credits to be at the beginning of the film, and Lucas basically said, no, I'm going to use non-union work, and we're not going to do that.
Yeah. And he puts those right at the end, where you have the initial flash-ups, which used to be in sort of the beginning of the movie. And again, I just don't see them going down that route while it's becoming a big thing in movies. I just don't see them going down that route with Star Wars.
Me either. If anything, Star Wars has been too slavish to its formulas.
Yeah.
Okay, 18. We will get an explanation for how the First Order gets the resources to run a massive armada of starships.
Oh, good Lord, no.
No, that doesn't explain anything. That's not what Star Wars is about. If anything, Star Wars is about under-explaining what's going on. They leave all the expanded universe stuff to fill in the gap.
This is science fiction. If a Star Destroyer can hover in a planet's atmosphere in Rogue One, we do not need to explain where you have the resources to build it.
And then take off without destroying everything below it.
Exactly.
All right, so I've got false for that one too. Number 19, the final climactic lightsaber duel will be between Luke and Kylo Ren and will be the mirror image of the Vader fight in Empire Strikes Back, with Luke defeating Kylo Ren and telling him that Han and Leia are not actually his parents, Luke is his father. Kylo will realize that this will be why killing Han Solo doesn't actually make him stop being tempted by the light side.
No.
Yeah. Although this comports with my overall theory, I don't think they're going to have Mark Hamill doing fight choreography. No offense, Mark, if you're listening. I actually tagged him for this podcast episode. He didn't want to come on, unfortunately. But no, I don't think... I think Mark Hamill would be misused in that role.
Yep.
I think he's much better in the Ben Kenobi wise master role and saving the action for Rey.
Well, it's not one of the prequels in this. I do think one of the potential predictions with it is, does Luke survive this movie? I think that is also one of the potential, sort of questions in conjunction with this. And while I think there is a very good argument that he doesn't,
I think he will.
I think he will, and I think
they're going to kill off Han, Luke, and maybe Leia. They're going to exit the narrative at least. So Episode 7 was Han's swan song. 8's going to be Leia's now since Carrie Fisher's gone. I think they originally planned for 9.
I think they originally planned to 9, or into 9.
So I think 8 will be our farewell to Princess Leia, and then 9 will be Luke.
Yeah, but I think the other thing with it is sort of knowing the filming was done, they can use scenes that they would cut as her as a ghost later on and stuff like that. But yeah, I think the problem I have with this one is it's just a little bit too specific as to what it is. I also don't think that killing Han Solo doesn't actually make him stop being tempted with the light side. I think that actually will turn him more towards the dark, but I think he has to have the inherent conflict of what it is. His conflict is just simply more outspoken than Vader's is. And I think some of this is they're going to go a little bit opposite. Vader was basically the jackbooted thug who Luke was convinced could be changed. We don't see that until the very end. I think this is going to be a little bit the opposite. We have Kylo Ren being much more of a conflicted character. At the same time, I think we're going to see him turn darker and darker and darker.
All right, number 20. This one requires some explanation, too. Snoke is a shaman of the Wills. That's Wills. So the explanation is that the Wills was originally a narrative element of the original Star Wars script. The Wills were like these semi-immortal demigod-like beings that kind of observe what was going on. And this is like a common narrative device, like Lord of the Rings uses it. And the Star Wars saga we're seeing is them retelling the story like in the future, which is why it starts with a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. That whole plot device was dropped from the final story very wisely. But the concept of these wills, and like in Rogue One, Kirit Inwe, is that his name? The blind monk?
Yeah.
He's like a keeper of the Temple of the Wills, these guardians who are sort of Force-like but not Jedis. So that concept was reintroduced into the story in Rogue One, and a shaman of the Wills would be like a Jedi, or I guess a dark side practitioner, who is extremely deep in the Force because they're directly connected to these divine beings. And that's the explanation for who Snoke is and where he comes from and why he would not be a Sith.
But they lack midichlorians.
It's a really interesting theory. I just think it's a little too inside baseball.
Yeah, I think it's a little too inside as well. I mean, again, it's an interesting theory. I mean, I like the kind of sort of the idea of suggesting it, I think, as a theory. I have to go with false with it. My thing with it is I think we're going to find out who Snoke is. I think Snoke is a character who's going to require explanation. I think that's going to come in this episode, potentially.
I think he's just going to be a new character. I don't think they're going to like try and tie him back to anything.
Yeah, I've wondered if it's, he may just be entirely new, but I think we're going to need some past story of him. And again, I can very well see that coming in this.
Maybe that's where the Zahn thing comes in. Like he references like Grand Admiral Thrawn brought him back from the Outer Rim or something like that.
Cathan, whatever the Dark Jedi is in the Timothy Zahn novels.
What's his name? Joris Saboth?
Yeah, begins with C. I remember that.
Yeah. All right, number 21. Princess Leia does not die at the end, but she does have to leave and never return for some reason. I'm saying true. This was
your true one, and I know this is the alternative. This is where I obviously said false because I do think she does die. But I think this is an interesting idea of a potential explanation of the idea that she's sort of sent away for something. The interesting thing about it is I could very well see them doing this as it's like she's sent on a mission and does not survive the mission, which would be, again, I think a very nice swan song for Princess Leia. My thing with it is I really see them doing an actual, presentation of she dies on screen as a sort of, an honoring tribute to her. Yeah. And I think she's going to die very, very honorably.
The one thing that gives me pause in saying true on this is that I watched the compilation of all the trailers that have come out, and there's the scene they set up that Kylo Ren's in a TIE fighter, and he's targeting the main rebel ship that Princess Leia is presumably on, or at least it's cut to make it look like she's on it. And then one of the newer trailers that's come out shows Poe Dameron looking at that ship while it explodes.
Yeah.
At least it looks like it's that ship exploding, which would suggest that she was on it and she does die. If they do kill her off, I hope it's not that, boring. Not boring, but, she's just on a ship that gets blown up and that's that.
Yeah, I think, but I can very well believe it's going to be something as an interrelationship between her and Kylo Ren. Between it, I think there's going to be some relationship there. There's going to be something that they're going to call out in conjunction. That's why I think a lot of people have said with the trailer. Obviously, that trailer could very well be purposeful misleading. Does not surprise me all. But again, my take of it is I think she's going to sort of die very honorably. I think a lot of people were sort of upset by Han's death, but it's one of those where, to me, I was actually not upset by it. I actually thought it was a sort of honorable way for him to go as a rogue. It sort of fit him.
It made sense narratively.
And the idea that he sort of became a good guy in the end and it cost him. But my thing, again, sort of with it is I see it as being a very honorable on-screen death in conjunction with it, something that will do it. I can very well believe there will be a major funeral scene for her in the movie, sort of like the celebration scene at the end of you talk about the idea of the picture and the thing flying away. I could believe that is related somehow to her funeral or her, sort of death.
It could be.
The other reason for it is she is a Force-active character, and so I believe they can kill her off in this additional films that she has. She can easily come back as a Force ghost.
It's true.
She presumably has the ability to do so.
Well, they said they're not going to use CGI to recreate her image.
Yeah. But that's where I can believe they've simply cut some text. If she had extra text, they could simply use that in the future for other movies.
Okay, 22. The scene from the trailer where Rey lights her lightsaber in the rain is her fighting a vision like Luke did on Dagobah. I've got false on this because there's another scene where Luke is also laying on the ground in the rain saying, this is not going to go the way you think it will.
Yeah.
So I think that's the real Luke telling her. I think at that point she's storming off for some reason to go do something, and he's like, this is not going to work out like you think it is. So.
I give it as a true just because of the fact that I think there will be a scene like that on this. I think we need to have her sort of fight something with the dark side. I think it's going to be in the arguably Jedi library, which I think we see her enter alone at one point in time. I don't know if it's necessarily that scene, but I think we will have the vision, her fighting a vision of some form, which may very well be a flashback as opposed to a flash forward.
The next one is Kylo Ren saves Rey from Snoke. I've got this down as true. I'm not saying he necessarily turns on Snoke, but maybe Snoke is tormenting her or something, and Kylo Ren intervenes to save her.
I've got it as a false. Because I think that happens in the third movie.
Okay. Okay, 24. We don't actually find out who both of Rey's parents are. I got false. I'm sure you've got true.
I've got true, and the other reason is I think we may very well find out who one of them is, but I don't think we'll find out who both of them are.
And finally, the Millennium Falcon is destroyed.
False.
I've got false. It's too iconic. That would make so many people mad.
The issue with it is
you can't
the
make
very fact
Millennium
that
Falcon toys then.
Yeah, you can't make Millennium Falcon toys in there. And the very creation of the Outrider, I think in conjunction with Shadows of the Empire, say what you like about Shadows of the Empire of a story as to what it is. They could have just, talked about that. It was intended that the Millennium Falcon was going to be destroyed in Jedi, was going to be destroyed sort of in conjunction with that. They didn't do it. It's too iconic. It's too much of Episode 7 being there. I can very well believe that the Millennium Falcon will be the lasting tie always to the original trilogy.
Or the droids.
Or the
original droids.
But I can very well believe that they'd make it the Millennium Falcon just because of the fact that it has no narrative relevance, but it can always be there. It can be an antique. It can always be there.
If it's still there now, 30 years later, would it not endure? Okay, those are our predictions. So, you know what? Hopefully we're not... If we get to the end of this and it boils down to whether the Han Solo movie it decides the winner, then we're going to have an entire year of drama on this. All right, well, that's all we've got for our Star Wars Episode 8 predictions. Thank you for all of you who submitted them. This was really fun. Okay, so...
And we said no law at all, except for a little intro.
A little bit at the beginning. Our next episode will be very special. So this episode will be releasing the week of the Star Wars movie. The next episode will come out the week of Christmas, and oh, what an episode it is. So Kirk and I,
more Star Wars.
This is how dedicated we are to you, our listeners. We have both sat through the entirety of the Star Wars holiday special from the late 70s. And let me tell you what a painful extra. You know what? Save it for the next episode.
We'll save it for the next episode.
It is excruciatingly bad. I would literally rather sit and just stare at a blank wall for 2 hours. So we're going to talk about the Star Wars holiday special in the context of how you scrub things off the internet that are embarrassing that have somehow gotten out there. So that's the next episode. Now, we are actually recording several episodes today to make sure we have content for you over the holidays. So we will not be able to get to new questions. But our next episode will be that. And then on the week of New Year's, we're going to do Mailbag Day. And we've already got a ton of questions for that. But if you do have questions, please send them in. You can reach us on Twitter at LGGPod. You can email us at lggpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can talk to us on our Facebook page. Search for Lawyer's Guide to the Galaxy, and you will find us there. If you like what you hear, give us a review. We appreciate it. It helps other people find us. Also, we do other things on the social networks. You can find me on Twitter at Benjamin Siders, and Kirk is at Kirk Damon. That's KARKDMN.
Yep. It's abbreviated, so it's not as long.
So there's the music, and it is time to go. Thank you to the official LGG band, Lorem Ipsum and the Scriveners. Lorem, play us out.
The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by Lewis Rice LLC, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer. This podcast was produced and recorded at Cool Fire Studios in St. Louis, Missouri.